Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Radha Madhava ki jai. Hare Krishna. It is an honor, a great honor and a great responsibility to be asked to speak about the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm painfully aware of my lack of qualification, but I'm very grateful to be given this service because it helps me grow. And I seek your blessings so that I'll be able to say something which will resonate with you as well. We are reading the Canto 3, Chapter 28, which is entitled Kapila's Instruction on the Execution of Devotional Service. Kapila Devi is speaking to his mother, and he's talking about Ashtanga Yoga and meditation. Right now, we cover the breathing process, the sitting postures, and now in the previous verse, Kapila Dev just started to speak about the form of the Lord, or the features of the Lord that is to be perceived in the heart of a yogi. So, yes, my daughter is present today. She will disturb both you and me, but hopefully we can all find enough concentration in our minds and enough tolerance in our hearts to be able to endure this situation. Today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 28th chapter, verse number 14. Lasat pankaja kinjalka Pita kausheya vasasam Shrivatsa vakshasam brajat Kostuba mukta kandaram Lasat pankaja kinjalka Pita kausheya vasasam Shrivatsa vakshasam brajat Kostuba mukta kandaram Lasat pankaja kinjalka Pita kausheya vasasam Shrivatsa vakshasam brajat Kostuba mukta kandaram. Please chant. Lasat pankaja kinjalka Shrivatsa vakshasam brajat Kostuba mukta kandaram. Lasat pankaja kinjalka Pita kausheya vasasam Shrivatsa vakshasam brajat Kostuba mukta kandaram. Lasat pankaja kinjalka Pita kausheya vasasam Shrivatsa vakshasam brajat Kostuba mukta kandaram. Lasat pankaja kinjalka Pita kausheya vasasam Shrivatsa vakshasam brajat Kostuba mukta kandaram. Lasat pankaja kinjalka Pita kausheya vasasam Shrivatsa vakshasam brajat Kostuba mukta kandaram. We go word by word. Lasat, shining. Pankaja, of a lotus. Kinjalka, filaments. Pita, yellow. Kosheya, silk cloth. Vasasam, whose garment? Shrivatsa, bearing the markers of Shrivatsa. Vakshasam, breast. Brajat, brilliant. Kostuba, Kostuba gem. Amukta, put on. Kandaram, his neck. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. His loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of a lotus. On his breast, he bears the mark of Shrivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kostuba gem is suspended from his neck. Purport: the exact color of the garment of the Supreme Lord is described as saffron yellow, just like the pollen of a lotus flower. The Kostuba gem hanging on his chest is also described. His neck is beautifully decorated with jewels and pearls. The Lord is full in 6 opulences, one of which is wealth. He is very richly dressed with valuable jewels which are not visible within this material world. So chant the verse again. Lasat pankaja kinjalka pitako sheya vasasam shrivatsa vakshasam brajat kostuba mukta kandaram. His loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of a lotus. On his breast he bears the mark of Shrivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kostuba gem is suspended from his neck. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakayam Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivikasha Swami Tinamine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swami Tinamine. Snigdha Cheta Supranita Bhakvinam Charasaprantam Prabhagavata Prananavi Bhakti Charupanam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. So in today's verse there are 3 specific marks of the Lord mentioned. One being the yellowish shining cloth which he wears. Second being a curl of white hair on his chest or a Shrivatsa mark. And the third being a Kostuba gem. Now, yellowish shining cloth is also, in some places in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's called that it's glittering. The exact words used here are Pita Kausheya Vasasam. Kausheya meaning silk, means he's wearing yellow silk garment. And Pita Vasa actually is also one of the names of Lord Chaitanya. When he was a householder, that is one of his names, he was wearing yellowish shining cloth. As a sannyasi, then he is called Raktapata, which means the one who wears red cloth. And then we have Shrivatsa, the curl of white hair or the Shrivatsa mark on his chest. Now in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 4th canto, 8th chapter, verse 47, it is stated that the Shrivatsa is the sitting place of goddess of fortune. There is a story in Padma Purana that explains how Lakshmi Devi once saw the attractive feature of Lord Krishna, and she wished that that he would grant her a boon. So then she started performing a very austerities and meditation. And when Lord Krishna appeared before her, he asked her, "What do you want?" And she said, "I want to be your associate." just like the gopis of Vrindavan. Too fast. Okay. So you're good? I can continue or repeat something? Continue, but a little slower. Okay. Sorry. I want to be your associate just like the gopis of Vrindavan. And Lord Krishna said that is quite impossible. And then she said, well, then I want to be a golden mark on your chest. I want to reside eternally on your chest. And Lord Krishna gave her that boon. So since then, Lakshmi Devi, she's always residing on the Lord's chest. And then there's a third mark that is called, distinctive mark that is called the Kaustubha gem. You know that in Vaikuntha, the residents, they have the same features of the Lord. They have a bluish hue, they have 4 arms, they very much resemble the Lord, but things like a white curl of hair on his chest or wearing a Kaustubha gem around his neck, that is specifically for something that only Lord Vishnu has. So this is how you can recognize him, how we can recognize him when we come to Vaikuntha. So then in Srimad Bhagavatam 8.8.6, the Kaustubha gem is mentioned to be generated from the great ocean, and that Lord Vishnu, he desired to possess it, to decorate his neck. I didn't find many things about this specific gem, but I remember once hearing from Banu Maharaj that a Kaustubha is actually a type of ruby, which makes it reddish in color. Then in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12.11.10, it is said that, I'm quoting, upon his chest the Almighty, unborn personality of Godhead, bears the Kaustubha gem, which represents the pure spirit soul, along with the Srivatsa mark, which is the direct manifestation of this gem's expansive effulgence. We have heard in this purport by Srila Prabhupada that his neck, the Lord's neck, is beautifully decorated with jewels and pearls. And I was trying to look a little bit deeper into, what his ornaments stand for, what do they mean. And I found in Srimad Bhagavatam 3.28.28 that it is stated that one should meditate upon the pearl necklace, the pearl on the Lord's neck, which is considered to represent the pure living entities who are always engaged in his service. So there are a lot of verses in Bhagavad Gita, in Srimad Bhagavatam, that explain how pure devotees, how the Lord always resides in the hearts of pure devotees, and how pure devotees always reside in the heart of the Lord, means on his chest, and how it's always a reciprocation of love and devotion between them. So in the purport also we read that the Lord is full in 6 opulences, and here, because it is describing his ornaments, the specific opulence talked about is wealth. Now, what are the other 5 opulences? Can we name them? One is wealth, then renunciation, beauty, fame, strength, yes, and knowledge. Yes, these are the 5 opulences of the Lord, and Lord has them in full. Now we, as a minute particles of Krishna, we also possess these 6 vibhutis or opulences, but in different proportions, in minute proportion to the Lord, and in comparison to ourselves, also some of the opulences are more expressed and some are a little less. I have heard a lecture by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu explaining the difference between self-realization and self-actualization. Actualization, to actualize oneself. Maybe you know in German? Okay, I'll explain, and then from the explanation can be grasped. So self-realization being, I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul, I'm a particle of Krishna, and I am eternally connected with the Lord in the loving devotional service, my position being that of a servant. This is the self-realization. Self-actualization being recognizing our own vibhutis, recognizing which attributes, which opulences Krishna gave us, and developing them. Now, karmis, they do it in the material world. Like Mozart, he was very, very talented on his particular field, and then but when you self-actualize in the service of Krishna, then you become an amazing kirtaniya. Not in the musical sense of the word, not necessarily, could be, but not necessarily, but in the sense of devotion that flows through your singing and playing. Voila. So, and since today we are speaking about the vibhuti of wealth, there are two different ways that this can be manifested. Wealth can be used as, this is a vibhuti some people have. As you see, some people are very expert in dealing with money. Some people are very expert in making money. Some people are very expert in spending money. So wealth being one of the vibhutis that some of the people are given. And so if it's used as service, then wealth can be purifying. But if it evokes greed, then it is contaminating. In Bhagavad Gita 16:21, there's a verse, Trividam narakasyedam dvaram nashanam atmanaha kamakrodas tatalobas tasmat etat trayam trajit. It is said there are three gates that are leading to hell, one being greed, lobha, and two others are lust and anger. Yes? Kama, lust, krodha, anger, and lobha, greed. So these are three gates that lead not to self-realization or self-actualization, they lead to self-degradation. And then the question arises, how do we purify greed? So any ideas? Yeah, that's a nice answer, thank you. There is a thing called transcendental greed, laulyam, and being greedy for devotional service, yes. Not for name and fame in devotional service, not for a position, but greedy for the internal connection with the Lord. So, thank you for the answer. Not quite where I was going at, but it's a good point. So, greed can be purified in two ways. Three ways. One is transformed into laulyam, into transcendental greed. One is by charity. So in Bhagavad Gita 17:20-22, it is described charity in the three modes of material nature. And we will start with the 17:22, which describes that charity can be done in an impure place, at an improper time, to an unworthy persons without proper attention or respect. What kind of a charity? In which mode of material nature this charity is? in the mode of ignorance. True. Can we make an example? Yeah. Yeah. If we give charity to a drunkard, then most probably he will use that money to intoxicate himself, and we did nothing good for him, we did nothing good for our purification. Then 1721 says that if we give charity with the expectation of return, we want something back, with a desire for fruitive result, meaning being pious in order to achieve the heavenly planets, or in a grudging mood. It's like, yeah, you can have it. So this is the charity in the mode of passion, yes. Can we find an example? What is it?
Some people give to charities to get the tax return expectation. Because they get less taxes, they pay less taxes.
Oh, yeah. A good one, yeah. To give in charity in order to avoid taxation. That's a good one, yes. That's charity in the mode of passion. And then the verse 1720 explains that if we give charity out of duty, if we give it without expectation of return, if we give it at the proper time and place, and if we give it to a worthy person, then that is charity in the mode of virtue, yes, goodness. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada also explains what the proper time and place are. He says that the proper place is a place of pilgrimage. A proper time is lunar or solar eclipses, or the end of the month. And a proper place also being the temple, and a worthy person being either a Brahmana or the same Brahmana, Vaishnava, a devotee. And Srila Prabhupada is also saying that spiritual perfection is always consideration. We never, giving charity in goodness will purify our greed, but we never do it indiscriminately. We always consider. It is always a matter of consideration. Another thing that Prabhupada mentioned, and I particularly want to mention as well, repeat after what he said, is giving charity out of compassion, which is also in the mode of goodness, but the worthy person has to be considered. So now we spoke about how our greed on the material plane can be purified. Now, how do we transcend it? Also, apart from turning it away, how do we achieve what Subal Gopal Prabhu was saying? How do we transcend our lower nature, anger and greed and lust? Any ideas?
Putting Krishna in the center of all of our activities.
Mm-hmm. That is. Putting Krishna in the center. And then more specifically, when we achieve to do that externally, we endeavor to do that internally as well. So, and it is done by meditation. So now these verses we are reading about the features of the Lord that is perceived by the yogis in the heart in their hearts. And when I was a new Bhaktin, I was told that if I want to see the Lord, I have to study Srimad Bhagavatam. Because Srimad Bhagavatam itself, it is a book form of the Lord. And just like when you go to see the Lord in the temple, usually, you know, as a new devotee, you're trained. First, you look at the lotus feet, and then you slowly, gradually progress till you see the Lord's beautiful face and his head. So the same thing, Srimad Bhagavatam is constructed like this. Prabhupada is saying in the preface to Srimad Bhagavatam that we should slowly and gradually go through the Bhagavatam to discover the form of the Lord. And anybody who studies either Bhakti Vaibhava or Bhakti Vedanta, they're taught that first and second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, they represent the Lord's feet. And then the third and fourth canto, the Lord's thighs. The fifth canto represents the Lord's deep lotus navel. The sixth canto represents Lord's chest. Seventh and eighth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam represent Lord's hands. Then the ninth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam represents Lord's throat. The 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam represents Lord's beautiful lotus face. The 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam represents Lord's forehead. And the 12th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam represents Lord's head. And for Ashtanga yogis, you know, to sit in an asana, motionless, to master pranayam, to look at the tip of the nose for years in and years out in order to have a glimpse of the form of the Lord. We are lucky. We go to the temple, we see the Lord. And we read Srimad Bhagavatam and we slowly discover what actually are we seeing when we enter into the temple. So if we want to transcend greed by looking at the beautiful lotus face of Lord Krishna, we can just go to the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And there is a story about the jewel. Since today we're speaking about pearls and jewels on Krishna's body, there is a story about a jewel called Shyamantaka jewel. Now, in Dwaraka, there lived a personality called Satrajit, who was a great worshipper of Suryadev, of the sun god. Shri Lakshmi Prahlad Narasimhadeva ki jai. And he was such a great devotee of the sun god that Suryadev actually came to him and donated a Shyamantaka jewel. And this jewel was then worshipped by Satrajit on an altar, and it was a special kind of jewel. It was a jewel that could produce 1 kilogram of gold every day. And Satrajit was very proud of, possessing this jewel. He would often put it around his neck and march around Dwaraka, and the jewel would be so effulgent that the residents of Dwaraka would think that Suryadev himself came, and they would run to the palace, to Krishna's palace, to inform him, saying, Suryadev is here. He's here to give homage to you. And Lord Krishna said, no, it's Satrajit. He's wearing this jewel that it's shining that bright. And but then one day Satrajit came to visit Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna proposed to him. He said, you know how the king should get the best of all? So I think this jewel you should give to King Ugrasena. And Satrajit said no. He was so attached, possessing this jewel, so proud of having it. And he said no. And then it happened that one day Prasena, which is Satrajit's brother, went horseback riding to the forest, wearing the jewel. showing off the opulence of his family. And he ran into a lion. A lion fought Prasena, killed him, and took the jewel, and ran into the cave. And on the entrance of the cave, Jambavan was looking what's going on. Now he killed the lion and took the jewel. But because he was a devotee of Lord Ramachandra, he did not really have a relationship with this jewel. Трішки купи лека маусе играчка. Yeah, and Jambavan killed the lion and took the jewel. He went inside the cave and gave the jewel to his son to play with. So, and because Prasena did not return to Dwaraka with the jewel, then Satyajit spread the rumor. That's what was his conclusion, that Krishna must have killed Prasena and took the jewel, stole the jewel. And to clear his name, Krishna and his associates from Dwaraka, they went to the forest and they looked for Shyamantaka jewel. They ran into the body of Prasena and his horse. Then they ran into the dead lion. And then the residents of Dwaraka, they stayed outside the cave, but the Lord entered the cave. He went inside and he saw this little boy playing with this precious jewel. And he wanted to take the jewel from the boy. But then the nurse of this boy, she saw what's going on and she screamed very loudly. And then Jambavan, the king of the bears, the father of this little boy, came. Who dares disturb my child's play? And he started fighting with Krishna. He didn't recognize him. He started fighting with him. And first they were fighting with all sorts of weapons. Then they were fighting with tree trunks and stones. And at the end they were fighting with fists. They were fighting for 28 days. They were fighting such a long time because Krishna wanted to enjoy this pastime of fighting. And because Jambavan was the right person to do it with. And after 12 days, actually, the residents of Dwaraka, because Krishna did not return from the cave, they thought, something horrible has happened. They returned to Dwaraka. And so after 28 days, then Jambavan said, nobody can fight me like this. You must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he paid obeisances to him. He gave the jewel to him. And he also gave him his daughter who was of meritable age, Jambavati. Krishna married his daughter there and returned to Dwaraka. And the residents of Dwaraka were so happy that Krishna came back. And he came back with the jewel. And then Satyajit actually felt remorse. He understood his mistake and his attachment. He understood his greed. And he wanted to apologize to Krishna, and he was thinking, how do I do this? And he said, the best thing actually to do is if I give this jewel to him, and I also gave him my daughter, Satyabhama. So then Krishna accepted the daughter, but refused the jewel. He said, let the jewel stay with you. Now, this pastime does continue. With other players, also describing the greed of Akrura even, who is a great devotee of Krishna, when he got possession of the jewel. But I'm going to stop here to make some space. If there's something to be added, if there's something somebody wants to correct me on something. If maybe there's a question I can answer, I cannot promise, but yes.
Also, greed can be our, überwunden, overcome through the knowledge that, in Sri Upanishad, first verse is the Ishavasya Medam Sarvam, everything belongs to the Lord, and everybody has to take only that part which is meant for him, and understand whom belongs everything. So if we if we develop, if we study Shastras, so maybe we can also diminish our greed from knowledge also.
True. So if there are no more additions, we're gonna end here. Thank you very much for being here, for hearing. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha, kripa sindhubhya evacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.